And yes, in AEDP, so we'll see, for people listening, if you can relate to this definition, the way we, in AEDP, which stands for Accelerated Experiential Dynamic Psychotherapy, for anyone interested. There's so many acronyms in the field of psychology.
Yeah.
So trauma is when one has overwhelming emotions in the face of too much unbidden aloneness. So we're feeling a lot. So any type of event can cause and create a tremendous amount of emotions to be triggered, and in an intensity that's big. And when we're young, particularly, we're so vulnerable to trauma because we have a very emotional brain that's not really yet developed, where as adults, our cerebral cortex kind of mitigates our emotional experience, attenuates it with our thought process. But children, if you've been around children, have big, big emotions. And so just imagine something very upsetting happens to a child. Let's say their dog dies, or let's say the parents are separating, and it's going to naturally trigger fear, anger, sadness. Now I'm with the sort of the more invisible traumas, right? Then if we get into overt abuse, that's going to trigger even more emotions. So, but if you imagine a little child of 3 or 4 having all these big feelings, and when the child tries to express them, parents don't have emotion education either. So parents don't know what to do with emotions, and they may just either try to cheer the child up. The parent may get triggered by the emotion and therefore shut it down. Like a lot of kids, if they get angry, if you say something like, I hate my brother. No, you don't. You love your brother. Well, it shuts it right down. And then the child's brain learns that something, if I show anger, right, in this way, it's sort of channeled into hateful words. Uh, it doesn't work out well for me. I get shut down. And then the child learns very unconsciously and automatically, when the anger starts to come up, to shut it down with these inhibitory emotions that I write about on this triangle. That's the diagram for all this. And the inhibitory emotions are anxiety and guilt and shame. And all these three, in different ways, are very good at stuffing down emotional energy, right? Real bio, because emotions come up, they're triggered in the middle of the brain, and the first thing they do is activate the body for an action that's adaptive, which is most easy to see with fear. So if we are afraid, let's say all of us experience some wild animal busting into the room, we're going to run for our lives before we consciously even know that we're frightened. It's only after that we've been having all this motion running as a result of fear being triggered that we will then be able to say, oh my God, that animal just scared the bejesus out of me. And am I safe now? And then we can evaluate the situation. So our body shifts and changes from an emotion being triggered way before we're aware of the feeling, unless we learn to read our body, like learning a new language. And you can slow down the whole process when you get triggered and be able to check in and notice what you're feeling and what the impulse is. And then we can control the impulse with enough practice.
Mm.
So back to trauma. So kids really develop these ways where they learn to push down feelings in order to survive the moment and the environment, depending on how their parents react to their emotions. And they develop well alongside it, but there are these sort of cordoned off areas from childhood that generally, when we can go back to and allow the feelings to come up and out from that time, that people feel much better. And that's really the root to alleviating a lot of chronic anxiety and social anxiety and depression and many other symptoms like eating disorders and addictions, um,
Mm.
and things like that.